Are you exhausted from trading your life away in a soul-crushing 9-to-5 job, secretly realizing that saving pennies will only make you rich when you're in a wheelchair and too old to enjoy it? You've been sold a massive lie called the Slowlane, a modern-day rat race that devours your youth and forces you to sacrifice your wildest dreams for sheer mediocrity. Fortunately, there is a hidden shortcut to wealth that completely divorces your income from your time and allows you to retire decades early. Listen, 10 Lessons from the Millionaire Fastlane cracks the ultimate code to financial freedom by teaching you how to build scalable business systems that act as money trees, generating passive income 247. Stop settling for a financial plan based on blind hope. Listen now to discover the exact mathematical formula to build extraordinary wealth while you're still young, vibrant, and able to actually live the dream.
Wow. Yeah, so right off the bat, if you're listening to this, you're going to notice that the author, MJ DeMarco, has a delivery that's incredibly brash.
Oh, absolutely. Very direct.
Yeah, it's direct, it's cynical, and he really takes absolutely no prisoners. But, you know, if we can just look past that aggressive tone, the core principles he's outlining are really rooted in undeniable mathematics and logic.
Right.
It kind of forces this complete teardown of the fundamental assumptions most of us hold about, well, wealth, time, and value.
Which is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. I mean, our mission here is to unlearn decades of, frankly, terrible financial advice. So if you're wondering why doing everything quote-unquote right feels so exhausting, we have to start by tearing down that foundational myth.
So let's jump straight into lesson 1, the get-rich-slow scam.
Yeah, the scam.
Right, because society sells us this very specific traditional path. You get a degree, you work for 50 years, you diligently save 10% of your paycheck, max out that 401k, and click coupons so you can finally be rich when you're 65.
Yeah, which DeMarco very bluntly calls wealth in a wheelchair.
Exactly, wealth in a wheelchair. And, you know, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the fundamental flaw of this path isn't just that it's boring. I mean, it's mathematical. It's something the author calls uncontrollable limited leverage, or ULL.
Wait, uncontrollable limited leverage, ULL. That sounds like, I don't know, dry finance textbook jargon. What does that actually look like for someone listening right now, maybe sitting in their cubicle or stuck in traffic?
Well, it's basically the reality of a paycheck. Let's break it down. Uncontrollable means you don't dictate your massive wealth levers. I mean, your boss dictates your raise.
Right. Yeah.
And the market dictates your job security. Then the limited leverage part refers to the fact that when your wealth is tied to a job, it relies entirely on time.
You're trading hours for dollars.
Exactly. You are trading an hourly wage or an annual salary. And the inescapable math is that there are only 24 hours in a day, and your human lifespan is, well, limited. You cannot physically work 1,000 hours a week. Therefore, your wealth creation has this hard mathematical ceiling.
Okay, let's unpack this. So if you look at the slow lane, it's essentially like making the worst trade imaginable. You are trading 5 days of your life, Monday through Friday, just to buy 2 days of freedom on the weekend.
A terrible trade.
Right. And you do that over and over until you die. But let me push back a little here, because my financial advisor, my parents, basically everyone says this path is at least safe. Isn't that why we do it?
Yeah, that is the grand illusion of the middle class. The source material points out that it's actually highly risky. Think about it. It relies on massive variables that you absolutely cannot control.
Like what?
Well, you're betting that the stock market won't experience a 40% downturn right the year before you retire.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that happens.
It does. You're betting you won't get laid off or replaced by AI over a 40-year period. And perhaps most chillingly, you are betting that you don't get sick or pass away before you actually get to enjoy that accumulated money.
That is a really grim reality check. So if relying on the stock market over 40 years is fundamentally risky, then what's the alternative? Because usually when people realize the slow way is rigged, they just start buying crypto or like lottery tickets, hoping to strike it rich overnight.
Yeah, the shiny object syndrome.
Exactly, which leads us perfectly into lesson 2. Wealth is a process, not a lottery ticket. They realize get rich slow is a scam, so they instinctively look for get rich quick. But they get it totally twisted, they confuse quick with easy, or they think wealth is just a singular event.
And that distinction between process and event is critical. Wealth is a grueling process. It is not an event. But, society loves to spotlight the event.
Right, the highlight reel.
Totally. We see the athlete signing a multi-million-dollar contract or the tech founder selling a startup for billions, and we just think, wow, they got lucky.
Yeah.
What we completely ignore is the decade of trial, error, sacrifice, and incredibly hard work in the dark that made that public event possible.
It makes me think of baking a cake. Everyone wants to eat the beautiful frosted 3-tier masterpiece. But nobody wants to be in the kitchen measuring the flour, getting their hands sticky, and burning 3 test batches along the way.
That is a great way to put it.
Yeah, people are seeking the event of the cake without engaging in the process of baking. And honestly, isn't that exactly why lottery winners or heavily indebted celebrities go bankrupt? They get the event handed to them, but because they never went through the wealth-building process, they have no idea how to sustain it.
That's spot on. The process is what builds the financial intelligence required to keep the wealth. And what's crucial to understand from the text is that luck is simply the residue of process.
The residue of process. I like that.
Yeah. If you aren't engaging in the process, if you aren't constantly putting your ideas, your prototypes, and your work out into the world, you are mathematically bending the probabilities against yourself. You have to be out there taking action for luck to even find you.
So how do we actually start that process? If I'm listening to this and I want to get out of the cubicle, what is step 1? Well, it's lesson 3, switch teams. From consumer to producer.
A huge mindset shift.
Massive. Society basically trains us from childhood to be consumers. We are taught to demand toys, buy products, and crave the newest shiny object.
Yeah.
To actually find the fast lane, you must switch teams.
It's a stark, almost painful dichotomy when you first realize it. The vast majority of people are pure consumers. They take value from the market, and as a result, they generally stay poor or middle class.
Right.
The minority are producers. They add value to the market, and they are the ones who get rich. Making this shift requires you to look at the entire world through a different lens. Instead of digging for gold, you need to be the one selling the shovels.
Exactly. Instead of financing a car, you need to be the institution lending the money. Here's where it gets really interesting. The source gives this brilliant example of watching a late-night infomercial that really made this click for me.
Oh, yeah, the infomercial example is great.
Right. When a consumer watches an infomercial, they get hooked on the emotional pitch and they just buy the blender or the fitness gadget. But when a producer watches that exact same infomercial, their brain works differently.
They're looking behind the curtain.
Yes. They don't look at the product. They reverse engineer the entire business model. They ask, how are they selling this? What's the psychological hook in the script? What are their manufacturing costs? And what's the revenue model?
It completely changes how you interact with your environment.
It really does. If you're listening to this, try it today. Next time you're scrolling through Instagram or TikTok and an ad pops up, stop looking at the sweater or the app they're selling. Look at the funnel.
Yep. Figure out the mechanics.
Exactly. Why did they target you? What is the call to action? Once you start seeing the matrix of production, you literally can't unsee it.
And that mindset shift is what allows you to start building the actual mechanics of wealth.
Which brings us to those actual mechanics. Lesson 4, plant money trees to divorce time from income. So, what does a producer actually build? The answer is money trees. The ultimate goal here isn't just to make money, it's to completely divorce your wealth generation from your physical time.
Right, because if you're just a highly paid freelancer or consultant, you're still bound by ULL uncontrollable limited leverage.
You're still on the clock.
Exactly. The text details 5 specific money tree seedlings that break that leverage. First, rental systems. This is real estate, royalties, or patent licensing. You own an asset, and people pay to use it month after month.
Okay, that's the classic one. What are the others?
Second, computer and software systems. This is the internet, SaaS products, apps. Third is content systems. Think books, blogs, or even this very audio deep dive you're listening to right now.
Because you create it once, and it can be sold or consumed infinitely.
Spot on. Fourth, distribution systems. This involves franchising or leveraging networks like Amazon to distribute physical products. And finally, human resource systems, where you build a company and other people do the operational work for you.
I want to linger on that for a second because it's vital. Why does a software system scale so differently than a human resource system? I mean, if I build an app, it costs me exactly $0 to duplicate that code for the millionth customer.
Zero marginal cost.
Right. But if I run a consulting firm, getting a millionth customer means I have to hire thousands of humans, pay their salaries, deal with sick days, and manage office politics. Software is a much stronger money tree seedling because the marginal cost of reproduction is zero.
Exactly. And the author shares this vivid anecdote that perfectly captures the power of a good money tree. He talks about being in Las Vegas and losing $2,000 playing blackjack.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's a terrible feeling, right? But while he was sitting at the casino losing that money, his automated internet business, his software and distribution system, generated $6,000.
That is wild.
His time was entirely detached from his income. Whether he was sleeping, swimming, or losing at the tables, the money tree kept bearing fruit.
So if you're listening on your commute right now, think about the company you work for. Are you the one building the money tree? Or are you just a leaf on your boss's tree?
This raises an important question. Is your current income tied directly to the clock ticking? If your income flatlines the moment you stop typing on your keyboard or clocking in, you do not own a business. You own a job in disguise.
Ouch. That is a harsh reality check. So let's say we start planting these trees. How big do they actually need to be to get rich? Well, that's lesson 5, the law of affection. The absolute rule here is to make millions, you must affect millions.
The author contrasts this heavily with things like the law of attraction. Wishing for money or trying to manifest a sports car by putting it on a vision board isn't an absolute law.
Right. The universe doesn't care about your vision board.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Mathematics, however, is an absolute law. The Fastlane wealth equation requires 2 things. Scale, which is the sheer number of units sold or people reached, and magnitude, which is the unit profit per transaction. You need massive scale, massive magnitude, or both to build extreme wealth.
Let's use a real-world example here. Take a massive sports contract. Why does a professional baseball player like Alex Rodriguez get a $240 million contract?
It's not because hitting a baseball is crucial to human survival.
Exactly. It's because he entertains millions of people on television. That is scale. On the flip side, if you're a real estate developer and you build and sell a luxury apartment skyscraper in Manhattan, you're affecting far fewer people, maybe only a few hundred residents. But the money involved in each transaction is massive. That is magnitude.
What's fascinating here is whether you are selling 20 million cheap ballpoint pens or selling 3 luxury estates, the law of affection is the gatekeeper. Every single lineage of self-made wealth traces back to this mathematical law. You either impact a massive amount of people or you impact a few people in a massively expensive way.
But, if the math is that simple, it begs the question, why do 90% of new businesses still fail? Lesson 6, stop chasing money, chase needs. The source argues the failure rate is staggering because people chase money instead of chasing needs.
Yes. Most people start businesses based on selfish internal desires. They say, I want to be my own boss, or I want a passive income stream to pay off my mortgage, or I want to set my own hours.
It's like money is a mischievous stray cat. If you run around the yard desperately chasing it, the cat is going to run away and hide under the porch. But if you sit still and hold a can of tuna, something the cat actually wants and needs, it will come right up and sit in your lap.
That's a perfect analogy.
But hold on, what about the classic advice to do what you love? I mean, every commencement speech tells us that passion is the key to success.
Yeah, the text shoots the do what you love myth down very directly. The marketplace does not care about your selfish desires. It doesn't care that you love knitting or that you have a deep passion for 15th century poetry or that you really need to pay off your student loans.
Harsh, but true.
Consumers are inherently selfish. They only care about what your business can do for them. Does it solve their problem? Does it save them time? Does it make them feel attractive or secure?
So the takeaway is pure value provision. If you solve a problem, fix a pain point, or make things significantly easier for 1 million people, the money will naturally follow. You don't even have to chase it.
Precisely. You have to shift your entire focus from what you want to extract from the market to the specific pain you can cure for the market.
Okay, but how do we know if our business idea actually cures a pain and has the math to succeed? Lesson 7, the NECS framework. The author gives us a very specific litmus test to determine if a business idea has actual Fastlane potential. It's an acronym NECST. Need, entry, control, scale, time.
Instead of just listing these out, let's run a popular side hustle through this framework. Let's say you decide to start a dropshipping business selling generic phone cases.
Oh, perfect. I see ads for how to start dropshipping like 10 times a day. Let's test it. N stands for need. Does your business solve a real problem or pain point?
Well, for generic phone cases, probably not a desperate need, but people do need to protect their phones, so maybe a week pass. If next is E for entry. Are there barriers to entry?
I'm guessing no.
Right. With drop shipping, literally anyone with a laptop can set up a Shopify store in 15 minutes and start selling the exact same phone cases from overseas. Because there is zero barrier to entry, the market is immediately flooded. That's a massive fail.
Which leads to C for control. Are you calling the shots?
In dropshipping, you rely entirely on Facebook or Instagram for ads, Shopify for your storefront, and a third-party manufacturer for the product. If Facebook changes its ad algorithm or the supplier raises shipping costs, your business evaporates overnight. You have zero control. Fail.
Wow. Okay, S is scale. Can it reach millions? I suppose technically yes. If it's online, you can ship globally, so that's a pass. And finally, T is for time. Can it eventually be automated to run without your physical presence?
Yes, e-commerce can be automated. But look at the total score. Because it violently fails entry and control, your dropshipping store isn't a Fastlane business. It's a road with a 10-mile-per-hour speed limit. You are completely at the mercy of platforms and competitors.
That failure of entry and control is where so many aspiring entrepreneurs get completely derailed. And that flows perfectly into Lesson 8 Drive. Don't hitchhike. This zeroes in on a very specific, dangerous trap, hitchhiking on someone else's fast lane instead of driving your own.
The text provides a scathing critique of multi-level marketing, or MLMs, and network marketing. Think back to the commandment of entry we just discussed. If you are sitting in a hotel conference room with 2,000 other people who are selling the exact same essential oils or weight loss shakes, using the exact same brochures, you have violated the barrier to entry.
Right.
If everyone is doing it, that is a massive, blinking red flag.
So what does this all mean? It means you are a guppy swimming in an ocean of identical guppies. You aren't building a business. You are simply a cog in the founder's marketing plan. You are climbing a pyramid, but you are absolutely not building one. The founders of the MLM are in the fast lane. You are just hitchhiking in their back seat.
And by hitchhiking, you violate the commandment of control. Blindly investing your life, your personal relationships, and your time into someone else's brand means you cede all control.
Right, because you don't own the product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If the parent company changes its compensation plan, alters the product formula, or goes bankrupt, you go down with the ship. You have no steering wheel.
You're just a passenger waiting for a crash. But let's say you realize this. You ditch the MLM, you pass the NCST framework, and you're finally driving your own brand. Now what? Lesson 9 ideas are worthless. Execution is king. You actually have to do the work.
This is a bitter pill for a lot of people to swallow. People love ideas. They treat their ideas like gold. But the reality is that an idea without execution is just neurological flatulence. It's nothing.
Neurological flatulence. That's a visual.
Yeah.
But I love the analogy the author uses here. He talks about the speedometer on a Lamborghini. It might say it can go 220 miles per hour on the dashboard, but unless you actually step on the accelerator, that car isn't moving an inch.
It's just sitting in the driveway.
Right. An idea is just potential speed. Execution is actually putting your foot heavily on the gas pedal.
And the text provides a brilliant mathematical breakdown of this. The author argues that a brilliant idea with absolutely no execution is worth exactly $20.
$20.
Practically worthless. On the flip side, a mediocre so-so idea that is paired with brilliant, relentless execution is worth tens of millions of dollars. The wealth multiplier is the execution, not the novelty of the idea itself.
Which exposes how ridiculous it is when people obsess over non-disclosure agreements. People will guard their million-dollar ideas like state secrets, terrified someone will steal them. They don't realize that the idea itself is worthless without the sweaty, difficult, unglamorous process of making it real.
Nobody's going to steal your idea because nobody actually wants to do the work.
Exactly. Investors don't invest in ideas, they invest in execution.
Show the market a prototype, build a brand, establish a track record. That is what creates actual value.
So let's play this out. You execute, you build a money tree, you hit the law of affection, and you generate massive wealth. You're rich. What happens then? That brings us to our final paradigm shift, Lesson 10, the truth about compound interest. There's a huge paradox here regarding the old Slowlane advice we mocked at the beginning.
Yes, it's important to clarify a major misconception here. Fastlaners do actually use compound interest, but they don't use it to get rich. They use it to stay rich and to generate passive income once the wealth is already acquired through their business.
The math on this is mind-blowing when you compare the two. Slowlane financial gurus will promise you that if you invest $10,000 at a highly optimistic 15% return, you'll be a millionaire in 40 years. That's the wealth in a wheelchair plan.
Right, waiting decades.
But Fastlaners leverage massive principal sums from the very start. If you sell your Fastlane business and have $10 million sitting in the bank, a highly conservative 5% interest rate generates $500,000 a year. That is $500,000 of completely passive income every single year without touching the principal.
The author paints a perfect picture of this. Think of compound interest like a tidal wave. You don't try to ride a tidal wave in the middle of the ocean where the water barely shifts a few inches.
Right.
You ride it at the shore where the energy hits the shallows. When you pit compound interest against a massive principal amount, like millions of dollars from a business sale, it creates an unstoppable, crashing force of passive income.
It's all about the math of large numbers. You use your business to create the millions rapidly, and then you use compound interest to pay your lifestyle bills forever. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, tearing down the slow lane and mapping out the fast lane. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative concept from the source to mull over today. It's the difference between indentured time and free time.
Oh, this is a very sobering concept.
It really is. The text points out that every luxury item you buy on credit, the car, the designer clothes, the oversized house, doesn't just cost money. It acts as a literal parasite.
A parasite on your time.
Yes. It eats your future free time and excretes it as indentured time, meaning that is time you are now forced to work a job you hate just to pay off the debt for the things you bought. I challenge you to look around your room right now, look at your car in the driveway, look at your gadgets, and ask yourself, how much of my future freedom did I trade for this stuff?
When you buy things you can't actually afford, you are literally selling your future freedom.
You are putting yourself right back in the slow lane. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, follow up in the next video.